Hello and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. The standard disclaimer applies. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, send questions or comments to our Twitter page at Mason Roundtable, on the Facebook event page for episode 210, Starting Masonic Research, or on the YouTube chat that's running alongside this window here. You know me, my name is John Ruark. I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia. And next up tonight, we have Robert Johnson.
Hello, Robert Johnson, Waukegan Lodge 78, Waukegan, Illinois, past master, current sitting secretary, and host of the Whence Came You Masonic podcast. Thanks.
Thank you, Robert. Next up, Mike the intern. Say hi, Mike.
Hey, how's it going tonight? So, I'm a member of Village Lodge number 274, Triandria number 780, where I am the junior steward and lodge education officer. But I am also, since we're doing research tonight, I'm an affiliate member of the Ohio Lodge of Research and an active member of the Ohio chapter of research and the assistant secretary.
Very cool. Busy. Next up, we have Juan Sepulveda.
Hello, everybody. Juan Sepulveda here from Orange Blossom Lodge number 80 in sunny Kissimmee, Florida, and the host of the Winding Stairs Freemasonry podcast.
Awesome. And last but not least, Jason Richards. Pregnant pause.
Good evening, everybody. Jason Richards here, past master of Acacia Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, and member of the Colonial Lodge number 1821 in Washington, D.C.
Very cool. Alrighty. First up for Masonic news this week, we have, you guessed it, just a little reminder, we are weeks away from the best Masonic event ever, next to TMR.
Outside of TMR 300.
That's right. That's right. If you're in the Boston area on April 28th, come on down to Masonicon, which is hosted by Ezekiel Bates Lodge. It's a third year running, and you will get not one, not two, but at least three of the TMR hosts there this year. So every year it gets better, and so every year we're going to incentivize them to add one more TMR host every year. So you get 3 for the third, 4 for the fourth. See how it goes. So going over to their website, or they have a Facebook page that they're actually posting lots of little, dripping out content to kind of tease it out. These guys do a great job putting together. Brian Simmons, who is the sitting worshipful master, is just an excellent coordinator. He says his job, I kind of gave him a little message on the side. It says, you're doing a good job organizing this. He said, well, then I hide the chaos well. So I said, wasn't that a very Masonic thing to say? That's all we do, is we try to keep our chaos in check. Next up for Masonic news is really the fact that Chris Hodap, you go to his blog, all he was doing was posting links to other Masonic podcasts, including Whence Came You and Ex Oriente. So it was good. It was actually interesting to see, or to hear, Chris talk about one of his articles in a podcast form. What did you think of that, Robert?
It was pretty cool to get him to come on. I mean, I had him on the show a long time ago, and that was just him. I had said, hey, man, can you come on the program? And he was like, well, you can just record the lecture. And I was like, all right, cool. So I recorded the lecture. I put it out there, and that was great. That was show 100. And when I asked him about this particular piece, he was like, yeah, I can do a reading for you. I was like, really? Holy crap. Yeah, do it. So it was really cool to put that together. And the guy, honestly, I had to do almost nothing to editing. You can tell Chris has been in the game a while, because he just read that thing and it was perfect. And it was neat to, when you read something, you have a certain, I guess, emotional balance that kind of goes through you as you're reading something, and you tend to inflect certain things on what you feel the emphasis should be. And to hear the author of something like that come through and inflect his own emphasis on the things that he's talking about and where he wants to drive some, oomph to the conversation. He does that really well. And I think it was really cool to get him on the program. I saw him a little bit on Ex Oriente when he was on the live. I watched a little bit of the live, and I kind of caught it at a weird point in the show. Chris was talking with Eric about, they kind of got on the subject of boys will be boys, girls will be girls, and that's just the way it is. And Chris was talking about kids on the playground and boys running around, chasing each other with boogers or whatever they do. And he goes, that's just kind of the way it is, like they were talking about, like, I guess, enforcing gender roles and stereotypes and whatnot. And then it was kind of awkward because, Eric kind of said, well, there's no research that shows that. They're kind of blank slates. So where do they learn that, And I was just like, this is awkward. And then I turned it off.
Interesting. So, here's the secret, though. All it takes is Hodap to realize that he doesn't need much post-processing, and he could put all of our shows out of business by just launching his own podcast version of his blog. So nobody tell Chris that he could just capture the market that quickly.
The new Freemasonry for Dummies blog podcast.
Shh. Yeah, we're editing the last.
Let's never speak of this again.
Not speaking of it again. You know who else was on Ex Oriente this week? Mr. Juan Sepulveda. That's who.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
It was.
Time flies.
Yep.
What did you talk about, Juan?
It was a good conversation about the practical side of Masonry. As you may know, I developed a program called Applied Freemasonry that focuses on taking the lessons of Masonry and finding the real live application in our lives. But it went beyond just covering what Applied Freemasonry is about. It was more talking about the whole philosophy of how do we do that? Is it possible for us to, without the necessity of a lodge program or a Grand Lodge program, for us to actually find ways to apply Masonry to our lives? And you have to listen, because we had some really good back and forth about the thought process behind having something like Applied Freemasonry, and more especially the importance of really applying Masonry to our lives. Like, it would be futile for us to just acquire all this information and do all this research, like what we're going to talk about today, and then not find how to make heads or tails of it in our individual lives. So I encourage you to check it out. You can go pretty much anywhere. You go to the YouTube page for Ex Oriente, or you can go on Facebook, and the video should be there. But it was fun. I really enjoyed it.
As did I.
And for me, it was a great honor, because before I was a Mason, I used to listen to Brother Eric. So this was full circle. Like, here now, I was sitting as a co-host of the show for one episode. I thought, it was a great thing.
Awesome. Right, let's get into this week's topic, which is beginning Masonic research. This one was recommended by Brother Corey Phillips, as he was messaged the show and said, I'm having trouble finding out where to start, what's reliable, what's not. And so I thought this would be a good time, because we have a diverse group of Masons here with a variety of backgrounds and resources. Thought we'd all come on and share some of our favorite resources to begin your Masonic research journey. So without further ado, I guess I'll start, and we'll go round robin. I think the best place to go is whatever's closest, meaning specifically your local lodge. Most lodges have a Masonic library of some sort. Most because they've been around, brothers have donated books, and it's in this back room somewhere that you might be obvious, might not, but don't hesitate to ask. Because if you don't ask, you won't know what's back there. And I know that in my mother lodge, you've had a lot of old books that there were some things like, the history of all the meeting minutes of grand bodies, and that, it's okay. But then there were some really good encyclopedias and the like. So it's going to take a little while to kind of filter through what's there, but that's a free local resource, and most of the time, there's really no formal process to check out a book, right? You can just kind of go in, make sure the master knows that you're borrowing a book, and you can kind of keep it in almost indefinitely. So that's my first recommendation: is if you don't know where to start at home, and go find someone who knows where your lodge's local library is. Okay, next up, we'll go to Jason for his recommendation for starting Masonic research.
For starting Masonic research, wow. So I'm going to let you guys in on a secret. There is an amazing untapped resource in Masonic research, and her name is Larissa Watkins, and she is the librarian at the House of the Temple and the Scottish Rite Southern Jurisdiction headquarters. And she, if you ever get down to DC and you get a chance to go to the Scottish Rite, the House of the Temple Library, she's going to be there. She is absolutely incredible. And something that she loves to do is she loves to pull sources for folks who are interested in certain topics. So I went to the House of the Temple a couple of years ago when I was working on research for my Noahkite paper, and she actually ended up pointing me to a number of resources, and then she followed up with me via email afterward with some more awesome resources to check out. So if you're in the DC area, then get over to the House of the Temple Library, because that's an amazing resource. If you're not in the DC area, then try to get in touch with Larissa or anybody else at the House of the Temple to see if they have any recommendations on places for you to start, because a lot, especially of the older Masonic texts like Wilmhurst's Meaning of Masonry, Mackey's Lexicon, and others, you can find the PDFs online for free because they're out of copyright at this point. So if you're looking for direction, then that's a really good place to start.
Awesome. Okay, next up, Juan Sepulveda. Research. What do you recommend?
All right, I do love your recommendation of starting hyper local, to just go there to your lodge within, among brothers. It's like if you're starting in Masonry and you have just a couple of books, start with those and kind of absorb them. If you've listened to the Winding Stairs, you've probably listened to an episode I have on taking care of the unfinished books. I'm guilty of it myself. I have.
That's my favorite episode, by the way. I have to.
Oh yeah, good. I'm glad you like it. I have to revisit it so that I can get my stuff in order again. But it's true. We have all kinds of access to resources, especially now that we have access to the internet, and it's almost like we have that what some people describe as paralysis by analysis. It's like you're presented with so many options that you don't even know where to start. Well, sometimes you just have to pick one thing and start. So I'll give you just one to begin with, and it's going to be somewhat self-serving because it is one of our episodes here in the Masonic Roundtable about our favorite books. There are plenty of reasons why we chose specific books for discussion in we have 2-3 episodes now that we've talked about our favorite books. So if you get the first episode and you just go through it, find favorite books, you'll find good resources there. And again, I encourage you to do that. It's just pick one resource and start working on that. And you don't have to always read them cover to cover, considering how huge these books are. But if you start building your own little collection, you can look within it. You can go to the, ¿cómo se llama? The compendium thing at the end. What is that called?
Library.
El apéndice.
Appendix.
Yeah. So you look in there for whatever subject you're researching about, and then start with what you have. If you have nothing, then start expanding your circle, then go a little bit further and go to your lodge. And if you don't find much there, then go a little bit further, maybe tap some of your brothers.
But be careful. It's like crack. because as soon as you get one Masonic book, then you get another, and then you got my library behind me.
And your wife starts leaving your clothes out front of the house, and it's just like the downward spiral.
Like, look, I got a new book in the mail, and you got a new divorce papers.
Yes.
Okay, Mike the intern. What's your favorite Masonic resource?
Well, Juan actually kind of stole it a little bit, but it is the Masonic Roundtable. Because, to start with, obviously I wasn't on in the very beginning, and that's where I got a lot of my ideas to start researching. And the book episodes were right on the mark. That's how I started my library. On top of the fact that I already purchased Freemasonry for Dummies and borrowed from the library. What's that other one? Complete Idiot's Guide by Brent Morris. Those are good, but but honestly, what I found is the first book you read usually has some kind of resources in it. Look at those for your next piece, especially if you've got an idea from your book. Then start using the bibliography of that first one and go from there. It's, you can't beat that for a good resource.
That reminds me of how sometimes you'll check one thing on Wikipedia real quick, and then you click on another link, and the next thing you're researching about little people bowling, right?
Yes.
Is there a Wikipedia article on that?
Yeah, there will be.
I'm sure there is.
It's just you go down this rabbit hole and you're like, crap, it's 4 a.m. I guess I better go to bed. Same thing's true for your Masonic research. That's a good one. And thank you for the TMR plug as well.
Yeah.
All right. There's other podcasts like Whence Came You as well, right, Robert?
Sure. Yeah, I guess we're somewhat of a resource at times. Everything that we put on the show is just usually some sort of paper that's gone up. Unfortunately, I don't have titles for every single one of my episodes, and I probably should go back. We started to kind of catalog them, but it's been difficult. We always have all these things that we're trying to do and catch up on everything else and stay current with things. So to go back and re-download and recode things, it's a pain in the butt. But I think a good place to start your Masonic research. So for me, when I think about Masonic research, it usually starts because I'm reading a text, and within that text, there's something that clues me into something I want to just kind of dive into. I don't necessarily have a question usually and go, well, what's the deal with that? So sometimes text has to lead me someplace. There are times though, like a couple of years ago, I was in this really cool kind of, I say cool, it's not cool. I was in a Masonic rut as far as writing was going for Midnight Freemasons. And I would just pull out my, Mackey's encyclopedia and just do the whole, open it up and put my finger down and then go, oh, that's neat. What can I find on this? And, if it's a topical discussion on something, then it's relatively simple to do. You have 3 resources which largely overlap and have not competing. There's a little bit of information followed by more information, followed by even more information. And that, I think in that order would probably be something like the Lexicon by Mackey, then Mackey's Encyclopedia, and then Mackey's Illustrated History. And what's interesting is, that's all Mackey. And so there's a problem there that we can talk about later. But that's a good place to start. And as Juan talked about the appendix, right? That's what I do. I'll pick up those last 2 books. I flip to the appendix. If we're looking up for, the Tyler's Sword, right? So I'm going to look under T. I'm checking that. Then I'm checking A.E. Waite's Encyclopedia of Freemasonry to see if he's got anything in there. The difference is some people are like, oh, I already own Mackey's Encyclopedia. What do I need to have A.E. Waite's? Oh, man, because it's not even the same at all. One is like Tobin's Spirit Guide. One is like Webster's Dictionary.
So and you've got Gould's Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. You've got Henry Wilson Coyle's, history of Freemasonry through 7 centuries. I mean, it's just
Coyle is insane. Like Coyle gets, I'm gonna call him kind of rowdy. Like he gets ornery with some things that he gets on about. Especially, I think Coyle and the landmarks, those don't get along very well, unless it's the ancient charges. I can't remember which, but Coyle's wild. But anyway, yeah. For me, it's about diving into a topic or a subject that I want to know more about, that I was exposed to within a current piece of literature that I'm reading. And then what I do is I literally just buy every damn book I can that has that in some sort of, if it's in the title or the description. I must have 15 books on the words, so I don't know.
I just happen to have Coyle's Freemasonry Through 6 Centuries on my desk.
Jesus. Well, there you go, everybody.
Volume 1 of 2. Volume 2's upstairs.
So yeah, that's my kind of hints or tips. It's starting anyway.
Awesome. Next up, I guess back to me. I was debating between like Grand Lodge buildings, right? Because they usually have a library. Now it's been my experience currently in 2018. If you go hit up random Grand Lodge websites, very, 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 very few of them have any like Masonic resources. The exemplar of one who does it well is Grand Lodge, Pennsylvania, with their PA Academy of Masonic Knowledge. And they have more than just, the twice a year live webcast now. They have a lot of good resources and a whole program for education. They do it well, they do it right, in my opinion. So I was going to say, well, go to your Grand Lodge library if they have it, if it's kind of, accessible. And so I'm going to say, so I'll give 2, 1.5. Go to your Grand Lodge library or a Grand Lodge close to you if you're far away from your, center of mass for your jurisdiction. But one thing that helped me a lot extremely well was doing some of the statistics research was the George Washington Masonic Memorial in Alexandria, Virginia. So yes, it's local to us, but if you are ever in the DC area, if you can go during the week, take a day to go down to the George Washington Masonic Memorial, 1, because it's awesome, but 2, contact Mark Tabbert, who's the librarian of the George Washington Masonic Memorial Library, and he will be more than helpful to help you find things. He's been just an awesome resource for me, willing to take pictures of things with his cell phone and email them to me as not all the things, but just occasionally if I need something onesie twosie. He's been a great resource. So his website's right on the George Washington Masonic Memorial website. Hit him up, say, I'm going to be in town this day. Can you open the library up? They have things that go back all the way to the 1700s and earlier. So it's right there. And most Grand Lodge jurisdictions, you've paid for it. $1 out of your dues in most jurisdictions have paid for it. So you've kind of already paid your dues there. So make sure you
look at my straight face. Look at my straight face right now when I tell you that none of my dues goes to that. Just look at it.
Wah, wah.
Same here.
Look at my straight face when I say that we don't even give anything to the GW Masonic Memorial.
Wah, wah.
Well, we don't do the dues, but we do donate a huge chunk every year. So I'm going to go on a little tangent here. I was just looking at a Facebook page from one of the Grand Lodges. I don't know if it was Ohio. It may have been Ohio. You can confirm this with me, Mike. They're talking about, 50 cents of all our dues go there. But if you want to give more, you can. And then someone brought up the question, well, like, aren't we like a grand sponsoring lodge or something? And they said, nope, because it has to be $1 for every member of that jurisdiction for the memorial to say that this Grand Lodge sponsors the memorial. Right. Ohio doesn't pay the per diem, but they do send, because I did discover this, they send a huge chunk of money. How much it is, I don't know.
Not $1 per.
No, but yeah. But it could be more because each year, because it does vary each year. That one thing I did find out. So
unless you're in Ohio, everyone else, you've paid your dues.
And what I think is wild and crazy and I don't know. I feel kind of it's a little irresponsible. You already said we're on a tangent, so I'm going to make this quick. Is for Illinois to be a sponsor, which we are not, it would cost us right around $54,000. We've got about 54,000 Masons in the state when we don't count dual memberships or whatever. So $54,000, not a lot of money. Considering, I mean, of course, our per capita is very low. We are by far not the lowest per capita, as I used to say. The information that was being passed to us is very erroneous. We're like the 16th lowest or something. The lowest is like $2 or something crazy like that. But if we could fund that, that's money to Masonic research. That's access to our, like, George Washington National Masonic Memorial has all of Illinois' preceding books before the fire even. And I believe even into our first Grand Lodge before we had to reconstitute it. And yet we can't scan those books because we don't have a great relationship with them. And I think that's ridiculous. $54,000 a year we could give them for something that is like the place for us. But it's kind of this, don't even get me started, like why, all of Scottish Rite, Northern and Southern jurisdiction just don't get a crap ton of money to the House of the Temple to make that something. But I digress.
And here's a picture of RJ getting off his soapbox.
Yeah.
Back to you, Jason. What's your next Masonic tip, tool, or resource?
One of the best tips that I can give you for starting off Masonic research is to research what you're interested in. Something I talked a little bit about when I was speaking with Brother Jared Stanley from What is a Mason. If you are not interested in the subject matter, then you're going to find it much, much more difficult to engage with the material in a way that holds your attention long enough to turn it into a presentation or some sort of paper. So sit down and look at your life in Masonry and say, what am I actually interested in? And start there. And you can start as general or as specific as you want. I recommend Masons and students who haven't done a lot of research start general and broad. Say, I'm interested in Freemasonry and astronomy. I'm interested in Freemasonry and the Enlightenment. Because there's no part of Masonic education that says that you have to make a groundbreaking contribution to Masonic scholarship. And I think anyone who wants to do that straight away, I think, is a bit overly ambitious, to quote some of our brethren from the show tonight. So just try to ease yourself into it and just start reading. The best thing you can do is start just reading source after source after source, and then start condensing and formulating your own opinions. But go with something that is broad, easy to research, and something that captures your attention.
That's a good tip. Very cool. All right, Juan, you're up next. Go ahead.
I was about to ask you if I could go next. Jason, I love what you mentioned about searching for what you like.
Good. I thought you were going to refute it.
No. I'm like, you are absolutely wrong. You don't know what you're saying. You're misleading these people. No. It is absolutely essential. And sometimes you don't even know what it is that you like. And here's an example. And I don't know if I've used it in the show before, but when I speak with younger men who are trying to like find their purpose or find a vision for their lives, I tell them, imagine yourself out in the open water in the middle of the night, just drifting away, and you have no exact idea of where you want to head. And in the mist, in the middle of the fog of that mist, you can see a little bit of a glow in that general direction. Well, you start paddling in that direction. You don't know exactly what you're paddling, what you're rowing towards, but you're moving closer to that area. Inevitably, the closer you get to that source of light, the more sure you're going to be about what that light source is. So I would say the same thing if you're finding what your thing is in masonry. Start reading all kinds of disparate subjects and different categories, different things, and pay attention to how those different things make you feel. And that usually gives you a little bit of an indication of how to, in which direction to start rowing. Um, it took me a long time, even though I kind of knew from the beginning, but finding practicality in masonry, how does this fit into my life? That's my thing. Like, that's how when I read, I usually do so with that frame of mind. It's like, what does this mean to me? I do enjoy knowing about the history of masonry, and I get a kick out of, knowing what brothers that came before me have done for the craft. But what really gets me excited is like how masonry can help me be a better father. How does masonry help me be a better businessman, or how does it help me be a better dad, a better friend? And that's what gets me excited. That's why I focus on trying to provide that to the brothers when they listen or watch any of the content that I create. So that was pretty much all about Jason. So the other resource I want to share very quickly is the Short Talk Bulletin from the Masonic Service Association of North America. I find that to be a quick reads that are from brothers like you and I that can point you in the right direction and get you excited about a topic. And excuse me, I know that now. Those are available. You can pay per article, or you can pay a yearly subscription, right? And then you get access to more of them, and they're even available as audio. It's $12. Thank you, Mike. $12 per year, and that gives you access to all the to be able to read all of these short bulletins. And you can get also the is it yearly that they do the compilation of them?
I don't know
I
if it's,
haven't gotten one, but I should.
but they definitely do compile everything into a nice bounded book.
Yeah. And that could be a very, very good resource to have. But recently, over the past year and a half or 2 years, they've been doing those in audio. And we have a brother that's been diligently putting those together in audio format, which I think it's really convenient if you're out doing, running errands, or Brother Michael Smith, who was doing that. Mike, I love you big time. And I think it's a resource that is available to you in any context. You could be doing mundane work at home, you could be in your commute, and you can still be consuming some Masonic research. So that's what I wanted to recommend.
Great. Mike the intern, what's your second best?
Well, one of the things I wanted to point out too is, we're talking about doing what you love, but the other thing is pick a reason you're doing it. I mean, are you doing it to write a paper? Are you doing it to provide education to your lodge? Are you trying to do it to create a presentation that you can not only take to your lodge, but to other lodges? What's your reason behind your research? Because that'll help with your focus on it, One of the other places I found that is pretty good for at least coming up with some ideas to start with as well is either your chapter of research or your lodge of research proceedings, if they publish them, on a regular basis. Because those are people who have already taken steps ahead of you. They've done groundwork that, may not, it will give you a direction. It also may give you other ideas on other paths that you might want to take. Again, it's all that, it's all in what you read and what you find out and what it is that interests you from what you're reading and what steps you're going to do to take that forward. And again, what are you going to do with it?
Very cool. Focus. That's the key. Love it. Okay, Robert, what's your next recommendation?
To learn where the unmute button is. My next recommendation, I want to make sure I hit this. It's a huge pet peeve of mine. I have two in Masonic research. Gary asked me in the chat there, like, what specifically do I look for in a quality paper, since I read so many of them on the show? And there's not really any key to like what I look for. I look for something that's interesting that might captivate the audience a little bit. In my own personal time, when I want to read a research paper, typically it's where I'm looking for that research. So while I like fantasy opinions, and when I say fantasy, I don't mean people are wrong. I just mean that there's just nothing to back that up right now. So I like to just read that stuff and see where it takes me. But my tip is context, like historical context. When we have books that have annotations, that's really good. Specifically when we're dealing with really old texts. Words that meant something 50 years ago don't mean the same thing that they do today. And this is something that nobody teaches a whole lot about. We have things that when we're looking at meanings of words, when we're looking at the context of those words, we might ascribe them just some random meaning, and they actually don't mean that at all. And when we take those words and when we actually put the correct meaning to them, we end up with an entirely different story or a different narrative altogether, something that might not have ever occurred to you. One great book that I always refer back to is, well, any book that Robert Alter specifically, I really enjoy his annotations in a lot of the biblical texts. So like my example here is the Pentateuch, and in here he refers to the name of Abel, as in Cain and Abel. And what's interesting is he talks about Abel like it's a name, right? But the thing is that the name has no etymology, and it's been proposed that it's the Hebrew word for hevel, which is vapor or a puff of air, which may be associated with fleeting life, which means he's named after what's going to happen to him, which is just crazy and wild to me. And I think that's something key that we need to pay attention to when we're doing research on old texts. That's it.
That is one of my pet peeves, right? So you cannot turn me off quicker on a Masonic program when you begin by saying Webster's Dictionary defines this esoteric Masonry term as blank, because you're automatically adopting a modern definition to something that was deliberately put there with a different context. And it doesn't matter how many times past masters they are or how long they've been in the craft. A lot of guys do it. And it's just like, you don't understand, to your point, the etymology of the history of the term, why it was there. And that was a perfect example of how words mean things. And it's hard because we don't speak those words today. But you've got to put in the work.
Yep. Yeah, it's like when everybody says hail, but it's heal, right? Mm-hmm. Same thing. That's just a prime example. But
yeah, and I love that because I was recently having a conversation with my son, and he is like hooked on the dictionary. And I was explaining to him the value of stopping what you're reading or earmarking your book to find out what some of these words that become obstacles or little bumps in the road, what do they really mean? They can, like RJ said, they can completely change. They can change the whole story for you. If you don't understand the context and the etymology of that word, you might be completely missing everything. So one thing I wanted to add very quick is you can come at reading Masonic books and doing your research from two two or more points of view. You can do them just for entertainment, and you can mark things that you think could contribute to a research you're doing or could contribute to some content you want to create, or you can come at it purposefully to find the content or to support whatever idea you're trying to convey. So it doesn't mean that every time you read Masonic books, you're coming in just to do research. You can do it at leisure, but just don't deprive yourself of creating that little earmark or putting a bookmark or putting some highlight there to remind yourself, okay, I got to do a little bit more with this, whether it is putting out content for brothers, writing a paper or giving a short presentation at Lodge.
Okay, so I guess it's back to me then. The next topic, this one's going to be slightly controversial for Masonic research, is the internet. And I always give the caveat to say, do not Google anything Masonic until after your third degree, right? For a variety of reasons, the least of which being that every jurisdiction is different. Despite the universality of Freemasonry, every jurisdiction has their own different words, different syntax, and so anything you read before you become a Master Mason, you're gonna get wrong, plain and simple, right? So the more you research different texts, now you can understand context of what is true for your jurisdiction, what's true in general, because separating out the Illuminati and all the anti-Masonry stuff, right? But Google's your friend. Start, if you don't know a term, use that term and then put Freemasonry next to it, or Masonic or something like that, so you correlate these things you're trying to go down. So that's. But again, it comes with a cautionary tale. And by the way, you might stumble upon some other pendant body things that you haven't joined yet. But that's kind of comes with the territory. So tread lightly. There be dragons ahead. But the internet can be a great resource once you have the foundation from your Blue Lodge to know the difference between right and wrong, or true and false. So there we go. Jason, last time around.
All right. So, John, I'm really glad you brought up the internet, because that was going to segue perfectly into what I wanted to talk about, which is vetting your sources. So I think Wikipedia has been mentioned once or twice. It's still it's still controversial, the idea of using Wikipedia in research, even in Masonic circles. If you look at the Philalethes publication guidelines, they specifically call out, use specific reputable sources, i.e. not Wikipedia. That was at least as it was a couple years ago. So when you are using the internet for research, and even print publications for research, realize that there's a lot of stuff out there, and there's a lot of really good, reputable, peer-reviewed things, and then there's a lot of anecdotal research that uses a little bit of fuzzy logic, and there are a lot of less reputable sources out there. So go back to our discussion, Masonic Research Part 2, Empirical versus Anecdotal, with Anthony Mongelli, and take a look at that. But when you're starting to do research, make sure you're looking at vetted sources. Any of the big monographs are going to have some sort of, hopefully, some sort of peer review process, especially any monographs that are published through like Cambridge University Press or things of those natures. And those are usually books that are published specifically by professors of history and other specific academics. When it gets to Masonry, with everybody being able to publish on like Lulu Press, it becomes a little bit more fuzzy, and sometimes you have to go with word of mouth as far as, okay, is this really an author who knows who he and she are talking about, or should I go and take a look at something else? So especially when you get to internet research, make sure you recognize the website, make sure you recognize the author that's being quoted, and make sure that the work itself just frankly passes the sniff test, because there's a lot of crazy stuff out there. There are a lot of folks who purport to speak on behalf of Freemasonry. Of course, nobody can speak on behalf of Freemasonry because it's just a worldwide organization that doesn't have one single head to it. So just make sure as you're reading your sources, take a look at the author, take a look at where you found the source, and take a look at the source itself. Say, okay, does this make sense, and does this pass the sniff test? There's a lot of fake news out there with even with Masonic publications, and the quality of Masonic writing and publications will vary greatly. I mean, even when you get to a blog consortium like the Midnight Freemasons, that's not a place you go for a lot of deeply scholarly peer-reviewed work. Now, the work that the Midnight Freemasons do is fantastic, but a lot of it is strictly anecdotal, and that's okay. There's a place for that, and I'm proud to be a part of that. But if you're looking for something more academic, then you're going to need to perhaps look elsewhere, to a place like Philalethes or the Masonic Society, where they actually have a peer review process set in place, and some very, very strict and stringent publication standards. So make sure what you're using for your research is quality, because the last thing you want to do is base an entire paper or an entire article that hinges upon just a source that isn't reputable. And so, it's not just taking everything you find on the internet. You need to do a little bit of detective work as well to make sure that the sources that you're pulling from are actually worth something.
But you can always trust the past bastard. 100% all day, every day.
Next.
One.
Wait. I needed RJ to tell me where's my mute button. There it is. Here, 1 second. Okay, I apologize. I got a little distracted there with the YouTube comments.
One more time around.
All right, one more time around. So among the resources that I use, of course, I completely agree with Jason that you have to be careful what you pay attention to. But sometimes even some sources that you are not 100% convinced that are well vetted or proper, like Wikipedia, for example, they can point you in the right direction. And using them in that regards is a good idea. Sometimes they kind of like point you towards things that you didn't necessarily know, or that you perhaps wouldn't have come up on your own. And then you try to find a reputable source that has it. Among them, I have one that I look for online is I go to bezel.org sometimes to look at different Grand Lodges, whatever edicts they've had. And I don't know if they're updating that website recently or not, but at least there are a good 7 or 8 years of content there. I think 2014 is the latest, or 2015 is the latest that I've seen edits in it. But a lot of the information there is helpful, especially when it comes to if you want to look at some statistics about Masonry, if you want to look at some Grand Lodge related communications, you can find that sort of thing there. So it really depends on what you're looking for. And I also wrote down about the Illuminated Sources, which is a free book that you can go get now at thewindingstairs.com. So if you go to thewindingstairs.com, and it should be on the first page, you'll find a link to go ahead and download it, and it points you to books that I personally recommend because I enjoy them and use them. Books, websites, podcasts, YouTube channels, and it needs an update, so a new version will come out before the year ends. But if you're starting, you'll find plenty of resources there that could be very helpful. Oh, thank you for sharing that. Yep. So you go to thewindingstairs.com and click on that link. Yes, send me my free book, and I'll send you your free book. Oh, wait, you're muted.
Man, we're having trouble with the mute buttons tonight.
It was RJ. He did it.
Thanks, RJ. And there he goes. Mike the intern.
Okay, so just a quick one going back to vetted sources, and even knowing that you have vetted sources in something. There was the History Channel video from a few years back where they interviewed guys like Brent Morris and Chris Hodap and Art de Hoyos and so forth. Well, one thing that I had noticed with watching it, they interviewed those guys and asked question after question after question, and then edited it to their desire of what they wanted to have it seem like he was saying. Whether or not it was exactly that, it's what they wanted it to say. So you got to bear that in mind, even especially when you got vetted sources like that. And I think a few of the other History Channel shows have done the same thing with people they've interviewed. Or they've picked someone up off the street that was a newly made Mason and, asked him all kinds of questions about something. And it's like, in the end, they come up as an expert as something else. So anyway, not to discredit all of that, but honestly, that's what you got to look at is, what it is you're hearing, what you're seeing, and so forth. But now to, some other sources. Another podcast that's really good for research is Historic Light. And where I'm going with this is interview the guys in your own lodge. Start, if you're interested in history, that's a big key right there, of course. But interview the brothers in your lodge. Read the lodge minutes. Read your Grand Lodge proceedings. I know some of that stuff can be a little boring, but the fact is, you can get some history out of that, and you can actually build pretty good history for your lodge if that's what you're interested in. And right off the bat, that's going to be a bit more factual than stuff like Born in Blood telling us that the Templars founded everything. So, but in any case, even Born in Blood was well researched, but made some stretches. So anyway, that's what you got to do. You got to even verify those sources and, again, keep going with that.
Mm-hmm.
And always, if you're doing research, make sure to document your sources.
Oh, good catch. Good catch. All right. So given the time, what we're going to do is we're going to go around for our final thoughts and shameless plugs, starting with Robert. Welcome back. And
thanks. Final, if nobody touched on this really quickly, don't just go out and write a research paper and base it off of hey, I got this information, and cite your sources as the Lexicon of Freemasonry, Illustrated History of Masonry, and Mackey's Encyclopedia. They're all the same source. Technically, it's the same author. It's not, you don't have a great base for what you're saying. So keep that in mind. Use multiple sources if you can. Secondly, utilize your Grand Lodge proceedings. I know Mike mentioned that, but I do a presentation on the history of Memphis Mizraim Masonry in the United States. I can't tell you how much information on that was inside of my Grand Lodge proceedings when they were basically being just ran up and down. Like, these guys were getting it handed to them, and all the information about this side of the argument was in those books. So don't be afraid of that stuff. You think it's dry, but it's only dry in parts of it. Like there's always Masonry has had drama since day one, and it's all in there. So check it out. If you like Masonic podcasts like this one, check out Whence Came You, Sunday nights, 9:30. I've got a new Masonic Curators going up featuring Brother Jared Stanley. I meant to put it up this morning, but I got a little backed up. So that'll be going up tonight shortly. And we've got a couple great articles coming out here on the Midnight of Freemasons this week. And, I'll be in Ohio starting on Thursday. So Thursday, I think I'm speaking at Royal Arch Chapter, Willoughby, and then Friday I'll be speaking at Triandria Lodge, and then on Saturday at 3 o'clock I'll be talking at Hope Lodge. So check all those out if you're in the area. The last two are going to be on colonial Freemasonry, and the first one at Willoughby Chapter will be on the Word. And understand we're going to be starting a little bit late that evening because we are honoring it. There, a member of the fraternity passed away, and so his funeral is going to be taking place. And so we want to make sure that we're not starting too early for anything like that.
Very cool. You're a busy guy.
Yep. For sure. And then MasonicCon at the end of the month. Woo!
Nice. You're going to need a vacation from all of that.
It doesn't stop till like my schedule's full till like June. No, in June, Camp Masonry, back to Ohio. So, maybe that's August. I don't even know.
You'll sleep when you're dead.
That's right.
Okay, let's see. Juan Sepulveda, final thoughts.
Okay, don't be overwhelmed if you're thinking about Masonic research. Start small, and but start now. If there's something in particular that you're interested in, just start little by little. If you have any doubts, ask questions. You have access to hundreds and hundreds of brothers that can help you in your research, that can tell you whether the source that you're looking at is reputable or not. So just reach out, and you're not doing this alone. But most importantly, do it. If there's something that's interesting to you, and try to seek, the different Masonic podcasts, YouTube channels, books, websites that might have discussed the topic, and have fun in the process. This is, on top of having fun, if you can find things within it that you can put into practice in your life, even better. Find inspiration within them to do different things in your life, in your business, in your family. Like that's what it's all about. So knock yourself out, have some fun. Let us know how it went. Let us know if it helped you, any of these resources. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do that before you forget, and hit the notification bell so that you can be alerted and not miss any of our episodes. And we don't only do the episodes you see here. Sometimes we do some in between episodes. We do some little posts here and there, so you don't want to miss those. So subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we hope you find our content edifying. And if you do, please let every brother that let them know. Especially if you're in a lodge that doesn't do a lot of Masonic education, how about you put together one day a computer with a monitor, with the permission of the Worshipful Master, of course, and run one of the episodes. It'll be just an hour of your meeting, and the brothers can perhaps get something different and exciting that they haven't seen before. So thank you as always for being a part of this great experience of the Masonic Roundtable, and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you. Mike the intern.
So as RJ was talking, he reminded me of something when he said about the the lexicon and so forth that were all by Mackey. One other thing, when you're doing your resources, or whoever your sources are, when you're quoting those, make sure you're quoting the actual source. In other words, some books you'll read and it'll say, you'll find a quote in there. Well, then you'll find out that quote is actually out of A.E. Waite's book, or whatever. Make sure that's the source you're quoting if you're going to do that stuff. Just putting it out there, because if you don't do that well enough, it can lead to your own demise on some of that stuff. The other side to it is, you never know who the actual source is, if you're not following that train, you might find out, well, the original source wasn't accurate. So anyway, also about Willoughby chapter, yeah, we are starting that one late that night. One of my lodge brothers actually passed away. He was the organist for our lodge, and almost every lodge in the district he would go to and play the organ for their degrees. And so he was very well known. He was 91 years old, and he was also a past district education officer. So again, well known. So a lot of the guys in our district are going to be at that funeral. So that's why we decided to start a little late, because that's actually at 8:00. So between 8:30 and 9, we should be able to begin our evening at Willoughby chapter. So,
Right. Thank you, Mike.
Mhm.
Jason, go ahead.
All right. Masonic research doesn't have to be scary. Just do it. Start contributing to the body of Masonic scholarship. There's a lot of room for people. So just start small. Start with something you like and use sources that are worth something. And enjoy. Let us know how it goes. If you're in the Maryland area, a week from tonight, I will actually be speaking at Montgomery Cornerstone Lodge, number 195 in Rockville, Maryland. I'm going to be there with the Grand Line of the Grand Lodge of Maryland, doing a table lodge with them. So I'm going to be speaking on Scottish Freemasonry, and it'll be a lot of fun. And then if you aren't there, I will hopefully see you at Masonicon here in a couple weeks.
Nice. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, so my final thoughts just basically sum up to use all the resources we have tonight, but always, always, always apply critical thinking. Right? Critical thinking is a lost art here in the 21st century in 2018. But as the rest of the host said, really step back, think about who's saying it, what their context is, what the point they're trying to get across. Make sure you know the etymology. Just really do your homework. Think about your sources. Don't just cut and paste anything you saw off the internet. So that's it. Just make sure you're diligent in your Masonic research. But after that, go nuts, because if you're asking the question mentally to put it on paper, then someone else is asking it too, and there you go. You are satisfying another brother's needs by the time you present that paper, whether or not you know that or not. So this has been great. Good topic. Thanks for all your contributions, guys. Thanks for the live chat, the comments on Facebook. You guys are awesome. We'll see you next week. Thanks very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.